Welcome back. Excited to be joined once again by my colleague and friend, Preston Diamond. My name is Kevin Ring, and Press, over the last several years, we've seen, consistently very low unemployment. And while, in recent months, the numbers have shown the unemployment rate ticking up a very small amount, that hasn't changed what I think we've seen both here locally in Asheville, and that we're hearing from advisors about pretty much all of their clients and prospective clients needing more people than they can hire.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Kevin, from all indications in most of the trades that I read too. And so that's a continuous problem. And I think our process addresses that. It's still up to the employer to follow the process, and that might be the hard part.
And another thing that we've heard from a lot of advisors over the last several years are that because they're so desperate for people, that they've been willing to change their hiring processes to make them a lot less rigorous, and probably even more concerningly, short-circuiting, new employee training because they just need people on the job.
Yeah, valid points, and it'd be interesting to look at the surveys about that, if we could find those kind of surveys of how that happens and how it is. What's unemployment now, Kev?
As of the number at the beginning of August is 4.3%.
And in the scheme of things, that's about average for the last couple of years.
All I know is it was up a tick from July. The number I don't have in front of me is labor force participation, and of course the unemployment rate only shows us the percentage out of the people looking for work.
Correct.
And there are some pretty interesting numbers that I've seen about, during COVID, a really dramatic drop in the overall percentage of people participating in the labor force. A lot of people dropped out to because they had to take care of their kids because their kids weren't in school during COVID, and those numbers have been slow to come back up. So I don't know underneath that unemployment rate, what's contributing exactly to that number, but it is certainly not increasing to the point where it feels like there's a great surplus of people, and there are a great many dangers for an employer that changes hiring processes, and certainly changes how they train. It's a consistently true over a long period of time that about 1/3 of OSHA recordable accidents, so this is information that comes from the Department of Labor and OSHA, about 1/3 of all OSHA recordable accidents are suffered by employees who have been at work less than a year. And it's easy to surmise that that's the case because you're dealing with employees who are less experienced, who are just kind of getting up to speed, and if you stop doing whatever training had been customary in your business, then you're just encouraging that number to be even larger among your new hires.
Yeah, something that I read yesterday about, and it's really not involved in us. Macy's closing hundreds of stores, and other businesses are doing that too. So it's a matter of the employer having the right mindset to train their workers so that they stay and the business stays open, because the business is on the number of people it has and how they handle their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then employers, I think it's fair to say, by and large, don't have, I'll say, an especially diligent hiring process, which is probably not fair. Most employers, the start of the process is the same. They post the job, they get a number of applicants, they decide which of those applicants they're going to interview. They interview those folks, and they decide who they want, and then they say, "Congratulations, you've got the job." Potentially with a stop in the middle for a drug test, but it's people, from what we're hearing, employers are routinely being less selective because they simply don't have a great pool of applicants to choose from. And it seems like if you start accepting a lower quality of employee, then a lower quality of work is likely to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the employer has to be cognizant and theoretically follow the rules to hire the best employee. And I don't know how many are shortcutting it or not.
In the context of drug testing, one of the things that we've been hearing about now for over a decade, since Colorado and California were among the first to legalize marijuana. There's the question of, well, what am I supposed to do with my drug testing program? And now it's 33 or 34 states, I think, that have legal marijuana in some form or fashion, and employers are confused and conflicted about what they should do, because many states offer drug-free workplace credits, and of course employers have been encouraged for decades to have drug testing programs.
Yep.
And there's a lot to say on this topic, but we'll start first with companies that have drug-free workplace credits in the states where those are available. And all of those credit programs, I've looked at probably most of those over time, and all of those require that your drug testing program test for all federal Schedule I drugs, which at the moment, marijuana is still on that list. There's some movement from the federal government to move that down the list, so it would move marijuana out of Schedule I and put it someplace that is probably arguably more appropriate than putting it alongside heroin and those sorts of drugs.
Right.
But until or unless that happens, if you want to maintain that probably 5% credit on your workers' compensation, you have no choice but to leave marijuana on your drug testing panel for your hiring process and whatever else the drug-free workplace credit requires to earn that credit. Outside of that, employers can, as an employer, when you create your own drug-free workplace program, it is up to the employer, what drugs they want to put on that list. So if an employer feels like, having marijuana on their drug testing list is bad for business, then they can remove it and leave other drugs on there. And I think that's what a lot of employers have done. And I think it's probably a better plan than abandoning drug testing entirely. But of course, at the end of the day, I think the vast majority of employers really only want one thing from their employees, and that is to not show up to work intoxicated. They don't much care what you do when you're not at work.
Yeah. And that's, that's been forever. But let's talk about the two forms that help employers maybe overcome some of these problems that the Institute's used for a long time.
Yeah. So, when we talk about the hiring process, one thing that employers can insert into this process between the congratulations, you have the job, to hey, you start on Monday, is first the conditional offer of employment. And you can find a great deal of information about conditional offer of employments online. A lot of the HR related websites on the internet have articles about this. If you're part of the Institute, you've certainly heard about this when we teach it, when we talk about injury prevention. But what the conditional offer of employment does is it says, congratulations, you have the job, but there's a condition, and that condition is that in medical opinion, you are physically and mentally capable of performing substantially all of the essential functions of the job with reasonable accommodation. And so what this form does is it creates a job offer. This person has the job. It is not something that we are filling out with every single person that applies, or even every single person that we interview. We are offering this individual the job. But the condition is they have to be able to do, the essential functions of the job. So the next step for the employer is to document those essential functions. And many employers already have what are often referred to as ADA compliant job descriptions or functional job descriptions. These are things job descriptions that say things like, must be able to lift at least 25 pounds, must be able to bend and twist, whatever those essential functions are. So we document those essential functions. We offer this, individual the job, and then they have to go to a doctor for a physical exam. And hopefully this doctor is a physician that the employer is selected, hopefully the same doctor that, is treating their injured employees. And at that doctor's appointment, the doctor is certainly going to do a physical examination. But they're also going to inquire about that employee's medical history. And at the end of that, the doctor is going to send back to the employer not their medical history. That's important to note, because while HIPAA does not apply to workers' compensation, HIPAA absolutely applies to their personal medical history. And so what the doctor is going to send back, hopefully, is that this employee is all clear. There are no restrictions or concerns, but it might also come back and say, well, this person, has a 20-pound lifting restriction, or this person can't lift their right arm above the shoulder, or whatever it is, which then puts the employer in a position to take that medical opinion and determine whether or not this person is capable of doing the work with or without reasonable accommodations.
Yeah, so the right doctor at the right time is critical.
Well, yeah, and you cannot just send the new hire with the medical history questionnaire and say, go to your personal physician. Yep. First of all, that personal physician doesn't know, anything about the business. All they have is the job description. And secondly, there's the very strong potential for a conflict of interest. If I go to my personal physician and I say, hey, doc, I really need this job. I need you to help me out. You know, I don't know what percentage of doctors would check off somebody that really shouldn't be, but it's a lot more likely if you have a relationship with that doctor as the employee than if you go to someone who is more disinterested.
Yeah.
And also your personal physician is unlikely to have a great deal of knowledge about occupational medicine and that sort of thing. So then once that information comes back to the employer, hopefully everything is clear and that person can start on the day they were expected to start. But if the results are problematic and it doesn't appear that this individual is capable of doing the work, then the employer, through the conditional offer of employment, can say, listen, in medical opinion, you're not capable of doing this work. We're going to have to withdraw the offer. And that's a bummer because we wouldn't have put this individual through the process if we didn't want to hire them. We thought they were the best fit among the people that we had available to us. But it's a huge benefit to the employer. Last year, according to NCCI, the average indemnity claim was about $54,000. And if someone is not physically capable of doing the work they're being hired to do, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when they are going to get injured.
So in your experience, what percentage do you think really follows the rules that they should about hiring? Or is that just catch can for every business?
Well, it's interesting you use the phrase the way that they should be hiring because, it's not the institute or an HR website saying, this is how businesses should hire. The federal government, the EEOC, has put papers out outlining how this process works and how it's the best way to bring people on board. I don't have the slightest idea about what percentage of businesses are doing this. I think it's fairly common among larger businesses. There's certainly some types of businesses where it's really not a great fit. If you're running fast food restaurants and you have 300% turnover and you're excited if you have an employee that works there long enough to collect their first paycheck rather than you having to mail it to their house, that's not going to be a great fit. But of course, when we're talking about the types of businesses that agents who focus on workers' comp really want to go after, you're talking about manufacturing, construction, healthcare, of all stripes, those types of businesses, this process fits in very, very well. They're typically, not doing a tremendously large volume of hiring, and the work tends to be physically demanding. I mean, think about a home health nurse that they tend to work independently, and it's been very well documented that there is no safe way to lift a human, right? When you're talking about trying to get someone out of bed, it's a very dangerous thing to do, made even more so if the person, doing the lifting, isn't physically capable of doing it. So it certainly makes sense for those types of businesses to do it. And sometimes employers will push back and say, well, it's too expensive. I don't want to have to pay for that doctor visit. And so then, we go back to that $54,000 average indemnity claim. So, what's that going to do to your experience mod? How much is that going to cost you, over the 3 years that injury is going to live on your mod? And how much are those physicals going to cost? What we hear from advisors is, depending on, geography, It's probably somewhere between $150 and $250 for a pre-employment physical, probably including a drug test. So, let's say a $54,000 injury will be, conservative for a good sized comp account costing you, $20,000 over 3 years. And, it seems like 250 goes into $20,000 a lot of times.
Yeah.
And, it's an inexpensive upgrade to your hiring process that can prevent injuries that are waiting to happen. There's a whole other profession that deals with, making the workplace safe and preventing injuries through, more practical means in the workplace. But when an employer hires someone that is not physically capable of doing the work they're being hired to do, it's literally just an accident waiting to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As incidences go down, the cost of comp goes down.
Well, right. I mean, that's why we're talking about, the impact on the experience mod when you have an injury. This is the first step in accident prevention. It's not the only step. It's not, hire right, and then you never have to worry about occupational safety. But you can have the best safety program in the world. But if you hire someone that shouldn't even pick up a baby, much less a 50-pound, bag of concrete or something like that, then, there's nothing a safety program is going to do that's going to avoid that person getting injured eventually. It might not happen the first day, but if they have that kind of restriction or should have that kind of restriction, they're not going to last long before they suffer an injury. And it's probably not going to be, just a couple days.
Yep. Very cool. Good conversation, sir.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me, Preston, and thanks to everyone for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time.